Well, it looks like we're at 10 o'clock. Good morning. My name is Anthony Bly. I'm a soils field specialist with SDSU Extension. My office is located in Sioux Falls, but as you know, I roam the state quite a lot and try to meet as many people as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully we can make this work. I'll click it one more time. I'm assuming everybody can see that. Is that correct?
Looks good, Anthony.
Thanks, Sarah. Just need a little confirmation. Yeah, today I'm going to talk about a topic that's can be kind of controversial in certain settings, and I'm not intending to bring that controversy into my discussion at all. I'm intending to look at what's real or the reality right now of society and where we're at. Not going to take any sides of this issue at all, but so that's why I've titled my presentation, "What's All the Fuss About Carbon?" And since I'm a soils field specialist, I'm going to bring a soil perspective to this thing. But first of all, I'm going to point out a few books that I think you should be reading, or if you have, maybe there's one here that you haven't, but basically the one on the left, the Soils Owner's Manual, is a very easy read for those of you that don't like to read a lot of books. Everything in life comes with an owner's manual. And John Sticka really really had a good one there when he devised this soils owner's manual, and it is really an easy kind of understandable document, and I think everybody that works with the soil should read that, and it's kind of a primer for more intense discussions on the soil physical properties, if you will. But I think it's really neat that on the cover of that book, if you see that white square there, you see a couple cows standing in some forage there, and then there's a mirror image of that below, and that is intended to show or indicate that the soil is full of life and biology, and there's a herd under the soil. Then the second book, The Hidden Half of Nature, we're going to ramp this up a little bit. Dr. David Montgomery is really a geologist, and he studied soils all around the world, and it's really a good read. And then the one on the far right is Gabe Brown out of North Dakota, a farmer's perspective on his regenerative ag journey. So there's many other books. I just threw those three up there. The other books are really good as well. I'm not trying to, I don't get any royalties for pointing these books out or anything like that. But anyway, read books, watch webinars and so forth, and get educated. So here's kind of the run into the next 8 slides or so about the current status of what I'm going to throw up for you today. And here's the carbon dioxide levels on the planet, and you can see that goes back, well, the chart says 800,000 years, and then to the current levels. And while this may be controversial, I'm just, this is what society is working from right now, and it's reality. I think everybody should understand this point of view, if you will. And one would question, how did they get these levels? Nobody had CO2 sensors way back then, and basically they use ice core data from the polar caps, and they drill down, and they can see certain layers of things that have happened, and they correlate those layers with other things that they know in history that are written, like volcanic eruptions and things. Obviously, there's nothing from several 100,000 years ago that are written, but they build confidence in more recent history. And so they can measure the gases trapped in those ice cores, because those ice cores aren't solid water. There's gases trapped in them. And you can see the up and down nature of that CO2 through time. And that's just changing climate, if you will, changing atmosphere due to volcanic eruptions and so forth that have happened. But the more recent time period is what's alarming a lot of scientists and sorry to say politicians too. But that recent up spike in those levels is alarming. It's a place that they say we've never been, and of course that chart shows that. So here's that recent time period from 1960 to 2020. You can see that it's gone from just over 300 part per million CO2 now in the atmosphere up to over 400. And so that's an alarming increase. Anytime science sees a trend like that with something like that really vertical increase at the end, that's an alarming trend. And so something that we need to pay attention to. So let's talk a little bit about the greenhouse gases and what they are. CO2 is the big dog in the room, or the elephant in the room. It's most prevalent in our atmosphere, and so it gets all of the attention, if you will. But there's several other greenhouse gases: methane, nitrous oxide, ozone, even. Ozone's good in upper atmosphere, but in the lower atmosphere, it's not. And it's created by interactions of some of these other greenhouse gases. And so it's not. The CFCs, coming from aerosol cans, carbon monoxide coming from fossil fuel emissions, sulfur dioxide coming from fossil fuel emissions. And so what we have here is the methane, that the cattle people have been targeted, or that's their greenhouse gas because of cows belching methane. Nitrous oxide is the fertilizer, mainly the nitrogen part of the fertilizer industry. Carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxides, that's fossil fuel burning. And then ozone and CFCs, they're basically all of us. And so that's kind of my take home message is, this is about all of us. When you point a finger, there's three fingers pointing back at you. So that's not my intent today, is to point a finger. It's to try to bring a little bit of clarity on this cold February day. But no, it's not advancing. How come it doesn't advance? There we go. So the greenhouse effect is nothing more than the sun's energy striking the planet, and it's reflected back, and proof of that is the astronauts taking the pictures from the moon showing a visible picture of the Earth. And so we know light is reflected back, and what happens is as the greenhouse gases build up in the atmosphere, you can see those red lines there. That light is not reflected fully back into space, but it hits those gases, and some of that is trapped at the Earth's surface and increasing our temperature, a greenhouse effect, just like where you go to the greenhouse to buy flowers and other things. That's the effect. And small changes, 1 or 2 degrees, could have big implications for our planet, and I think they are currently. So this isn't anything new. Joseph Fourier in 1827, a French scientist, studied this effect. And didn't intend to put all those words up there for you to read that, but it's a common thing. There's nothing's new under the sun, basically. And then John Tyndall in the 1860s, he studied the light absorption by greenhouse gases. So he identified these gases and was interested in how they absorbed or reflected light. And so this is old science. This is not anything new that's been construed or brought out. It's a well-known fact. So if we look at these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, again, I mentioned carbon dioxide is the elephant in the room, and we can see that its concentration here on this chart is 394 ppm, but it goes up and down a little bit there. But it accounts for about 56.4% of the greenhouse effect. Now, if we compare that to methane at only 1.77 part per million, much less than carbon dioxide, it accounts for 16% of the greenhouse effect. And it has way more reflective power than carbon dioxide. But again, I said carbon dioxide is the elephant in the room. It's the one everybody's focusing on, but it's really about all these greenhouse gases and how they're affecting the warming of our planet. So I've noted there that each one of us on a daily basis exhales 2.3 pounds of CO2. So again, this is a planetary problem, a planetary issue. It's all of our issue. And again, think about that, pointing that finger. No one can really do that because we all rely on all of these processes every day. Just a little neat comparison of different vehicles and how they emit or how much CO2 they emit. Of course, the larger the vehicle, the more CO2. Yep, duh. It's not rocket science. So there's the push for the dreaded electric vehicle. I think that's why it's a target. It can affect everybody. Again, opinions aside, that's reality and what's happening today. So where are these greenhouse gases coming from? A couple of weeks ago, I listened to a presenter talk about this kind of same topic, and part of his pie chart had ag. What percent of the gases are coming from ag? And I thought that was a little bit too pointed, if you will. But he was trying to make a different point, and that was good. I wanted to show ag is embedded in this pie chart, okay? And where the CO2 or the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from. And you can see that every one of these sectors, everybody needs, okay? Everybody needs everything on this this pie chart. Even if you don't go on a lot of trips by air, aviation, you're affected by aviation because maybe you mail a FedEx package or a UPS package or whatever shipping you're doing. We're all affected by this in different ways. So I'm going to look at the carbon cycle as it's related to livestock. I spoke to a few livestock groups, and I just happen to have this this cycle here. It's carbon based on livestock. There's no fertilizer additions on this one. I'll get to the nitrogen cycle in a bit, but you can see that effect or that sunlight there, that energy coming, the plant's ability to take that and to make complex sugars and to grow a plant, to create biomass structure, if you will. And then if you look at the base of that soybean plant, and I apologize for my corn plant, it's just a stick, but that green arrow pointing down over there is supposed to be a corn plant. But you see the arrows further down into the soil, and that's carbon being released into the soil. We call that liquid carbon. And so at that point, the microbes need carbon in the soil. And so they're really excited about that liquid carbon, if you will, coming from the plant roots. And so there's a proliferation of microbes around the roots and also nutrients around the roots. And so that's really what I call the great exchange. That plant is exchanging basically sun radiation that it manufactured in the plant, that liquid carbon, with the soil. And so the soil microbes are really proliferating, they're building, and they're storing carbon in the soil, okay? They also respire CO2 like we do. And so you can see that arrow to the right there, that brown arrow is CO2 being released back into the atmosphere. So, and then the plants are releasing oxygen, another important key part, because, well, we need that to breathe. So that's a carbon cycle with plants in it. And now if we think about the livestock are consuming the plant materials. You see that in the barn over there, and there's a little arrow there with methane pointing up to the atmosphere. especially from that cow. And then manures are produced, and then methane can be further released there. So just want to kind of bring that in perspective that this is happening, almost all the time. Maybe not in the dead of winter in South Dakota, but somewhere on the planet, this is happening, the tropical rainforest, if you will. And so it's very important cycle for us to survive. Now, if we look at some mitigation tools that are being proposed to reduce CO2 in the atmosphere, we can see that I've grouped them into 3 different kind of categories. There are tillage, cover crops, and nitrogen. And so the tillage, we know the more you do, the more CO2 is released in the atmosphere. And so reductions in tillage can stop that or slow that down. Because no-till still releases CO2, we know that, but the tillage really promotes even more CO2 release. So if we can slow that down, cover crops, what they're doing is they're, on that graph where I had the soybean and corn plant, the cover crops are doing the same thing, taking sunlight and water and releasing liquid carbon, and microbes are building and carbon is building in the soil. And so that's important for putting more carbon into the soil. Now, nitrogen management is a huge, there's many different ways to do that: timing, placement, inhibitors, a rate, of course, all of those things. And they're all incrementally small. Okay, I think you can see that. And that's a point I'm trying to make with this. This bar chart is that I stole from Farmers in Action, but basically that's what I wanted to use it for, is to show that. So being a soil specialist, I got to go into the soil health principles for those that haven't heard that today. If you have, sorry, I think it's just good to talk about them again, but keeping the soil covered is very important. The armor, protecting it from erosion and water and wind. Growing a living root is very important. Because as I mentioned, that great exchange happens at that root. And so if we just grow corn and soybeans in the middle of the growing season, we have huge brown periods at the beginning of the end. And as the prairie grew from the beginning to the end and was putting carbon in the soil the whole growing season, some of our chosen commodity crops don't do that all that well. They produce a lot of biomass like corn, but we still have brown periods and we still can fill them in with cover crops, or try to fill them in. Diversity is very important as well. I think of the plant pest, deterrence with crop rotations as being really important. But what really it's all about is it's about a buffet for microbes. If you're a microbe and all you have to eat or feed on is or feed by in association with our corn roots, we're going to have only certain kinds of microbes in the soil. We know there's a huge diversity of microbes in the soil that can do way bigger things for us. So as we go to a buffet and want to see 150 choices, if there was only broccoli and pudding, a lot of us would be very disappointed, right? And microbes are kind of that way. They don't have brains to think, but the more diversity we can have in our crop choices, the better that is for diversity of microbes. And the cover crops really help us do that really well. Limiting tillage really allows the first one to take place, allows structure to form, because at the surface of that root where the great exchange is taking place, organic glues are released, and glomalin is one of those glues that was found in the 1990s by Chris Nichols, a soil scientist. And so we create aggregates at those roots. And if we come through with tillage, we just erased all of that gain, right? And so if we leave that alone, more aggregates form, they get more stable, they build structure, they build pores, Now we have macropores. We have a lot of good air and water exchange, which is very important. And then lastly, that livestock integration for cycling of crop residues. You know, and I'm going to focus on the cow right now. That cow, she's out there grazing and really only taking about 10 to 15% of what she consumes just to maintain her life. The rest of it goes out the back end. And that's a great cycling of nutrients and carbon and making more stabilized carbon. So just a little review about carbon organic matter. I know a lot of you get soil testing done, and organic matter is what's on that soil test. But carbon is about 58% of organic matter. So just some equations here to show you the conversion. Not going to make a big deal out of that right now. Here's the some studies that we did comparing organic matter to organic carbon, and it's very good. I mean, there's really no arguing about that, but it's common scientific. We know that, but just to show you, here's the nitrogen cycle I was talking about. 78% of our atmosphere is made up of nitrogen. Legume plants have found a way to break that triple bond. It's an N2 gas with a triple bond. And so legumes can do that naturally for free. The plant root the plant is allowing that bacterium to invade the plant root and do that, but it's getting a huge benefit. It's getting nitrogen from that process. The other way is to add fertilizer. And Haber and Bosch, they didn't invent, but they discovered the method for industrially breaking that triple bond. And so that brought the advent of fertilizer, and it also brought the advent of destruction. All of our explosives and weapons other than dynamite are created from that Haber-Bosch process. So as that nitrogen goes in the soil, interacts with microorganisms, they assimilate that, they use it to break down carbon. Then there's some available for the plant, and we have the cow there, the manure eating and all of that. But basically, the reason I brought this up is if we look at where carbon is important in this process, we can see that it's all over. Carbon is needed at every one of these points. And so carbon is really the foundation or the cornerstone for really life. I mean, we've known that forever, but we've kind of ignored that and not played on the advantages of thinking about and managing that system. So, let's think about the ideal carbon to nitrogen ratio. And this slide's quite old, and there's a lot of interest out there in managing cations and base saturation, and I'm kind of sick and tired of that, but I continue to help people with that. But let's think about the carbon and nitrogen ratio, and let's forget about that cation stuff because it'll take care of itself. So ideally 24-1 in the soil. The microorganisms need about 16 of those carbons for energy and 8 for just living. But as we add back crop residues, this is what happens. With residues such as vetch and alfalfa with narrow carbon and nitrogen ratios, more nitrogen becomes available because there's plenty of nitrogen and carbon for the microbes to really break down or to go to work on those residues fairly easily. But if we add a high carbon to nitrogen ratio residue, the soil microbes run out of nitrogen, and it stops basically in the soil until more can become available, and then they go to work again. So that's why corn and wheat residue last a long time in the soil, where the legumes in this case don't. So basically what we're all after is using less fertilizer. I think there would be nobody that would disagree with me. And so I'm going to use a study we did, a nitrogen rate study here. When we do that, that's replicated 4 times at each site, and we had rates of 60, 120, 180, and 240 pounds an acre. And we see that yield response curve. And by sight, this old man just drawing lines and then drawing that arrow down, I estimated 55 pounds of nitrogen to maximize yield at this site. And I've done some of the economics there, and you can see huge return and so forth. But the big story here is we can't get these reductions in reliance on nitrogen without a lot of carbon. Okay, it's the carbon cycle, it's the huge nitrogen cycle that is basically so big at this site that we don't need a lot of extra nitrogen for a decent corn yield. Okay. And so that's the goal. The goal is to build soil, regenerate soil, build microbial diversity in the soil, and then that nitrogen cycle will follow along and you'll benefit with a smaller fertilizer bill. So over the last 2 or 3 years, we plotted all of the sites. Jason Clark and myself and our colleagues did a lot of this work. And we plotted that optimum end rate for each site that we did. And so you can see a huge range here from 0 all the way up to above 100. And, that's quite variable. But one thing that we know is that the zeros at the bottom are some of our leading soil health producers in our state. And so they're reaping the benefits of building soil, of regenerating their soil. Here's just a relationship between organic matter and yield. And, for every 1% organic matter, we have 29 bushels. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And farmers have known this forever, that the soils that have more organic matter, more carbon, better soil health, they produce more. And so that's why reading the Soils Owner's Manual and some of these other things should be a part of land ownership and farming. Now, tillage, has been measured to really reduce organic matter. This is a study here of an experiment in Nebraska. And we see that no-till's on the left, having the highest organic matter level, and the most extensive tillage is on the right, the mower plow, and then everything in between. So tillage, less tillage increases organic matter or holds it better. So here's a tillage comparison that I want to show you, and I'm going to let you look at that while I take a drink of water. You can see these two soils, one on the left being lighter colored, the one on the right. These two soils are just a baseball throw from each other. And across the road, the one on the left being managed more conventionally, corn silage removed, so maybe a little more harshly with that biomass being removed, but tillage as well. The one on the right, no-till for almost 30 years, and even just in a corn soybean rotation, not a lot of diversity, but you can see huge differences. And the one on the right being darker, more carbon, one on the left, lower carbon. But the structure is also very striking. The one on the right having that very chocolate cake view, if you will. But it's got, you can see the granules, the aggregates, the structure there. The one on the left actually has no structure. It's just not there. So anyway, a big difference there. I'm going to talk about cover crops now. They have just a huge amount of benefits. Basically, help forming soil structure, using sunlight and water above and beyond our cash crops to put carbon in the soil. And you can see all these benefits. I'm not going to go through each of those individually, but to me, it's about structure. Now, that's a picture of me. Those are my trophies, if you will. Kind of a weird way of, I don't hunt deer or anything like that, but so I went out looking for, the biggest radish and turnip I could find, and there they are. A lot to do over radishes, really fighting compaction. They do have penetrating power. And they do, but all cover crops are good at fighting compaction. And I contrast that with that deep ripper there and that the picture on the right, just a lot of instances where those even work. We've seen over the last 30 years, 2 time periods when these deep ripping tools were kind of becoming, if you will, popular. People were talking about them. Oh, you need it. You don't, you need it. Lots of farmers bought them, and hey, we did a lot of research on them, and they really don't do a thing. They just make deep cracks in the soil, and actually, if the soil is too moist, they smear the soil, and it just doesn't do much. The roots have the power. The roots will form the structure. Cover crops and other crops do that. So let's talk about water infiltration. It's just the downward entry of water in the soil, inches per hour. As the soil gets wetter, it somewhat decreases. However, if you have macropores there, that water infiltration remains and keeps going. And actually, if you have macropores that are deep, like night crawler holes, water will go down those holes all the way down. And I've witnessed this, and it's true. So I think we have a little bit of both going on, as water is wetting from the top down. And also, I think as that water goes down the deep macropores, it's wetting from the bottom up too. We call that bypass flow, by the way. So this is what we did. We pushed these 6-inch sections of aluminum irrigation pipe in the soil. Here are 2 fields we did it in: the no-till with the rye cover crop and the no-till without the cover crop. But we also did it on tilled sites with silage removal and corn stover removal and deep ripping. And this is a comparison of what we found. We put on 2 inches of rain. First inch we recorded, then we put on another and recorded that actually slightly above an inch. But let's just look at the first group of bars to the left. Those are our no-till, those that I showed you in the picture. The desire here is to have the smallest bars to get the water to go in the soil as quickly as possible. So the desire here is a smaller bar, not a bigger bar, kind of the inverse of yield. So cover crops did help the no-till because those bars in the second grouping from the left are shorter than the group on the far left. So that's the cover crop effect on the no-till. But the grouping of the third and fourth set of bars from the left is our tilled plots with corn, silage, fall tillage, and no cover crop, corn, silage, fall tillage with a cover crop. And we could see cover crop had a bigger effect on water infiltration there. And so where soil health is poorer, the benefits from doing something can be initially seen as greater. And so there's that effect. Then on the far right, we didn't have a cover, no cover comparison, but the far right is kind of our control in this case. But the corn stover has been removed. There was fall deep ripping. There was a spring field cultivator pass, and look at the amount of time it took to get an inch and the second inch into the soil. There's going to be a lot of water loss from this site if you get a heavy rain. And we've had those, and we're getting those, and they're coming more frequently. So if we talk about inclusion into existing crop rotations, we've tried a lot of different things. We've tried interseeding. We've done coated seeds. We've observed a lot of things, and basically these are the 3 that I would recommend that would be most successful. They have the highest probability. Not to say that interseeding doesn't work. It does. I just, for someone just starting out in cover crops, I really want them to have a good experience out of the gate to kind of learn, and then other interests will come in. And so now the cereal rye flowing into mature corn is, that can be controversial in small grain country. I was just out of Montana, all based on small grains, and cereal rye is it's a no-no in that area. they do not need it there because of their seed production, and they just should not use it. Now, in the far east of South Dakota into Minnesota and Iowa and the corn soybean area, I can see it. It is a more bona fide option. So you really have to take that into consideration when planting cereal rye on your farm. Obviously, planting after silage harvest is is easy to understand. There's a lot of time after silage harvest to grow a cover crop, and the player there is probably the manure applications that are taking place. And so that would be a little learning curve as to when to put the cover crop in and when the manure is going out. But I've seen a lot of examples of that, and it's working. So that is a good time for cover crops. And then obviously after our cereal grains, after we harvest those grains, we've got a brown period at the end of the year, and it's a good time to put those cover crops in. I talked about the radishes there. There's the picture of me with the trophies again. But really, all roots form aggregates. And the fibrous roots are probably more effective at breaking up compaction and making aggregates because they have a more extensive root system. You can kind of see that there with that cereal rye. All those roots there. Sometimes the picture is a little dark, but it takes all plants to do this job. And so, it's good to have that diversity. The tap roots have greater penetrating power, and they leave larger holes too as well. So all of that's good. So when and what to plant, crop rotation, you need to consider that, of course. Again, I'm going to repeat myself. The cereal grains give you more options, the brown period after corn silage. And obviously the corn soybean rotation offers us less options, and that's why that's flying in cereal rye at corn maturity, mid-September, late September, mid to late, when those leaves are falling, so that rye can have sunlight to grow is the key there. Now, while I don't like writing the check for the airplane every year, maybe there'll be options in the future. There's been some talk about robots. We have robots mowing lawns now. I've seen robots on tracks with lawnmowers. Maybe there can be a 2-row cover crop seeder, made to go down between the corn rows. I don't know. And a drone coming in and refilling the seed hopper. These are all futuristic things, which I quite frankly can see happening. With our warm season, generally you need to plant them by August 7th or you're going to be disappointed. Obviously we can get some warm weather later and they can do well. And so that's why when I do a mix, I include some warm seasons in there, but they're not predominant. Cool seasons probably should get those in before September 10th, on average. Obviously you need to read the year. If it looks like it's a good fall, you could probably stretch that a little bit. Some growth is always good. If you have 3-4 inches of plant height there, you got at least that or more with roots. So that's all good. And then the winter annuals like winter wheat, winter triticale, and cereal rye, I've seen them going up until November, and they don't grow a lot, but they're going to be there the next spring, which is a good tool. Here's just some examples for those of you that haven't worked with cover crops. You have lots of choices. I think you need to think about your rotation, and if there's a problem with harboring any diseases for the next crop, I think you need to consider that. I won't talk about that today, but basically a good diverse cover crop blend is important. So some of the principles that we have, just like we do with our crop rotations, is grass crops precede broadleaf crops and broadleaf crops precede grass crops. Keeping that living root as much as possible with the winter crops. I personally have used that a lot. I like that winter wheat growing on my farm in the spring before I plant soybeans. It's just a great way to build that soil life. Obviously, and we've measured yield reductions in cash crops from cover crops. It's not a secret. And if it's dry, don't plant. We don't have crystal balls. We don't know the future, but I think, the way this winter is turning out with the increases in precipitation, thank goodness, hopefully bringing us out of drought conditions across the state. I would be inclined to leave my winter crops grow a little bit longer this spring, maybe up into the time of soybean planting, that planting green. But if it had been an open winter and dry, yeah, then you might want to take them out earlier. The multi-species blends are important, very important. Again, I've talked about the cereal rye, to be careful of that. And if you're grazing, remember that soil armor is so important. And then I like cheap. I've kept my cover crop blends under $20 on my farm, but as we plant more cover crops and there's more demand for seed, personally, I think that is going to go up, and it has. And so maybe the next couple of years, $40 will be the cheap. I don't know, but just something to think about. So the annual cover crops die, obviously with the winter annual crops, cereal rye, winter wheat, we need to take them out with a burn down. We can include them in our herbicide pre-herbicide applications as well. And again, it's all about water management. So lastly, I'd like to talk about carbon credits. And other than the SDSU logo on this screen, these are the firms I could find in about 20 minutes to a half hour, just searching on the internet, firms that want to buy carbon. So it's quite astounding. I found some I didn't even know existed. And so this is the reality. That's why I started this with a few slides about CO2 in the atmosphere and greenhouse gases and all of that. It's basically the reality of where we're at. Okay. So we have to think about why these firms want to buy your carbon. They want to, because obviously they probably are going to sell them or use them to offset the carbon they emit. And so let's think about your farm's carbon neutrality. Someday in the future, now this is hypothetical, but I tell you, with my I'm not saying I know everything, but from my experience thinking about this and witnessing this happen, this is kind of what I want you to all think about. Will you in the future need to offset your own carbon on your farm? Meaning, if you buy diesel or nitrogen fertilizer, even to buy a new tractor, there was a lot of carbon energy invested in that new tractor. Will you need to show an offset for that from your own farm? And so I'm just saying maybe we should focus on keeping our carbon. Obviously, some of you need to make decisions contrary to what I'm suggesting, but hopefully it's an informed decision, and that's okay. It's great to live in a free society because we have choices. And so I just want you to think about those things. We know how important carbon is on the farm for yield. We know how important it is for soil health. We know how cover crops affect that. If someone wants to pay to plant cover crops, but you keep your carbon, I think that's a good deal. I mean, there's a lot of twists to this whole thing. And I just want you to be informed and think about that as we go forward in the future. So with that, I'm done. Think I'm almost on schedule, maybe a little bit early, but don't know if there's any questions out there. I don't pay attention to that enough, but I'm willing to talk about anything you want to talk about that's on your mind.